Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a joy to have back with us. It's been too long, and but glad to have her back. Laurie Cardoza-Moore is with us. She is the founder and the president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nation, which is an incredibly pro-Israel organization doing all kinds of things. And she just recently returned from Israel, right in the middle of all the activity over there, and also took some members of Congress with her as well. So I want to find out about that. And she's right in the midst now putting together a new documentary entitled Victims of Peace. So, Laurie, good to see you. How are you, my friend?
Harry, it has been too long. It's so good to be back on the program.
Yeah, wow. Well, listen, you were over there right in the middle of everything. And first of all, tell us what you saw and experienced.
Well, we saw raids, Israeli IDF having to raid a town north of Jerusalem. There were attacks, multiple attacks going on throughout the city. Everywhere we went, Perry, on any given day, we had ambulances, emergency crew racing to various scenes throughout the day. For 2 weeks, in fact, when we were there, we arrived right before Rosh Hashanah, and we were there for 2 weeks. There were attacks beginning right after the holiday. That holiday was over, or after Sukkot began, and it was unbelievable what was happening. I mean, there were just random attacks where these Palestinians were attacking Jews on the street, some murdering them, some wounded, some are still in the hospitals. But for 2 weeks, Perry, I was in touch with my staff here back in the States, asking them, is the news media covering what's going on in Israel? There was a complete media blackout. It wasn't until the congressman came to Israel. The first day of the trip was when they had the bloodbath in Jerusalem. And that was the day where there were like 5 or 6 multiple attacks simultaneously going on. I had contacted the staff. I said, are they reporting what's happening? There was nothing. The next morning, in fact, when we were on the bus with our congressman, we were taking them to a location. And as we were driving there were emergency vehicles that were passing by us. And we had gotten a call from our security detail. They said, don't go where you were headed. There's been an attack. We had to go to Plan B. We're heading to Plan B. And then we get another call. There was another attack in that location. So we ended up heading up to Samuel's tomb because they were shutting down the streets into Jerusalem to try to secure the city. Of course, we didn't tell the congressman what was going on. We didn't want to raise any alarms. We were secure. We had security detail all around the vehicle. But the next morning when we got on the bus and I held up the front page of the Jerusalem Post, headlines were Bloody Day in Jerusalem. And I said to the congressman, I said, yesterday as we were traveling, you noticed all the emergency vehicles swarming past us. I said, this is why. And I held up the headlines of the newspaper. And I told him, I said, yesterday was the bloodiest day so far since we've been here. And I said, and you all should know that there is a complete media blackout in the United States. No one is covering what's happening here, not even Fox News. We had 4 Christians who were on the trip, one Jewish congressman who came from California. And of course, our message, Perry, to this group of elected officials, whether with the United Nations or in Congress, in our state legislatures, or even our local school boards, our message is always to Christians that God has put them in this place of authority, and they have a biblical responsibility to uphold the word of God first before they do what is politically expedient. Well, the congressman from California actually came or made a statement after the trip that the thing that was most compelling to him when he saw the evidence on the ground in Israel, and we brought their wives with them, but he said that he was shocked at the lack of information being provided to the American public about what is happening in Israel.
There's so much that comes out of this. Hopefully they went home and they're awakened to what's going on. A couple of things come out of this. Obviously, further demonstration of this administration's disdain for Israel. Number two, you had Secretary of State John Kerry on the scene there trying to negotiate something, and the news over here was he left the meeting and nobody knew what the plan was. I mean, it just seems to be a complete abandonment.
Kerry and this administration were blaming Bibi for inciting what was happening. It was pathetic what was going on. Mahmoud Abbas was lying through his teeth, telling the whole world, oh, Israel's trying to change the status of the Temple Mount. He speaks in English out of one side and then in Arabic out of another side. But this time he was trying to obviously incite what was going on. He's convinced the world leaders that Israel is trying to change the status quo of the Temple Mount. We were up on the Temple Mount one day, Perry. We went up with Rabbi Chaim Richmond. I brought my camera crew up and went on a tour. It was early in the morning, so there weren't a lot of people up there, but the Israeli police surrounded us. We had about 20 security details surrounding our group. This is in the height of all these stabbing attacks going on because of the Temple Mount. And Rabbi Richmond took me on the tour. We walked past the Lion's Gate, and the people the police were preventing the people at the Lion's Gate, the Arabs, from coming onto the Temple Mount because we were up there. And within 15 minutes, one of the Arabs broke ranks from the line and attempted to stab one of the police officers. It was unbelievable. Israel is not trying to change the status of the Temple Mount. Because, of course, we as Christians, we see the Arabs trying to rewrite history, and now they're using Islamic terms to define the Temple Mount, to define the cave of Machpelah or the Patriarch's Cave in Hebron. They're using Islamic terms, not using Hebrew names, which has just historically always been used to name these places. The Temple Mount is the Temple Mount. 2 temples resided there. One day there's going to be a 3rd temple that will reside there. Unfortunately, right now you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock sitting there. But that does not negate the Jewish history and connection to these holy sites. But now we see, what are the Arabs trying to do? They're trying to take away the Wailing Wall too. It's absurd. And our administration is allowing this lie to be perpetuated without standing in the gap and saying no. Thank God, Representative Kay Granger from Texas has demanded that all funding to Abbas be stopped. We sent out an email while we were in Israel, asking all of our members around the world contact their elected officials, demand that our tax dollars be cut off from this man. He is inciting this hatred. He's inciting these vicious attacks against our Jewish brethren.
I got to take a break here. When I do want to come back, a couple things come out of this, Laurie. First of all, why this surge of attacks now on civilians? It's been suggested, the Palestinians being the pawn that they are of some of the Arab countries, is to divert Israel's attention away from possibly going and attacking Iran. Maybe you have some comments on that. But all of a sudden, these attacks flare up in public places. And the question is, why now? So let me take a quick break. Laurie Cardoza-Moore is with us. She's the founder and the president of Proclaim Justice to the Nation. Let me tell you this, folks. Her website is one of the best websites out there, PJTN.org. PJTN.org. ProclaimingJusticeToTheNation.org. Check it out. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with our good friend Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She is the founder and the president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nation. And again, her website is a real resource, pjtn.org, PJTN. She's one of the strongest voices out there on PDS sanctions, which is a voice against the boycott, divestment, and sanction of Israel. So you can check out a lot of that on her website. She's put out two documentaries that both have been Emmy Award winning, Israel Indivisible, which we've aired here on theDove, The Forgotten People, and she's working on her third now, and we'll be talking to her about that. Some of these documentaries have been reached more than 200 nations with the message of support Israel. And folks, we have an administration that's doing just the opposite. Your voice to your legislators, your U.S. senators, and to your congressmen has never been more needed than it is right now, especially with these attacks going on in Israel. And she has just returned there and saw it firsthand. So, Laurie, thanks again for being with us. Why now? Why these attacks now?
I believe that this is a concerted effort to try to take control of the Temple Mount, of that whole area in Jerusalem. And I think the key thing is, if you look at what the press is doing around the world, they're using Arabic terms or Arab names for the Temple Mount, for these holy sites. And I think that because what the Palestinians are doing, or the Arabs are doing, is they're trying to persecute or attack the Jews, creating all this chaos, wreaking all this havoc, which is going to force the world leaders to address this issue. And if you listen to what they're saying, they're accusing Israel of trying to change the status of the Temple Mount. Ironically, Perry, it's not the Arabs or the Palestinians that have control over the Temple Mount. It's Jordan. But the world is putting pressure on Israel instead. And I believe it's a concerted effort to try to take control of the Temple Mount away from the Jewish people, away from Israel.
Part of that effort, knowing that they somewhat have an ally in the White House, so let's do it now while he's still in office?
Yeah, time is running out. And they know that the United States administration, the U.S. administration with Kerry, will continue to push this effort. Because remember, Obama made it very clear, he's going to force this issue. He's going to make sure that the issue of Israel is addressed before this whole Arab-Israeli conflict is addressed before he leaves office. And the clock is ticking.
Okay. How is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu being received by his people?
The Prime Minister, of course, during times like this, gains a lot of support from the country. You know, there may be disputes amongst the Israeli populace over politics and issues, but when Israel is under attack like this, they come together, they unite, and they get behind the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is doing his job in protecting the Jewish people and cracking down on what's happening. And thank God he is. He's not going to allow the world leaders, the United Nations, Kerry, Obama, and these Arab countries to dictate to him what is important or what is the most expedient thing to do for the Israeli population. The Jewish community is counting on their prime minister to lead. You know, and it's unfortunate because Bibi stands alone on the world platform. We saw in Canada, we just lost a close friend and ally, Harper. In Australia, Abbott. Israel, you know, Israel stands alone. There are no world leaders anymore to stand with our Jewish brethren, to stand with the prime minister, to stand with Israel. And it's it's so critically important now. If ever there was a time for Christians to show their solidarity, to show their support for our Jewish brethren and the state of Israel, it is now. And anybody can easily access the Knesset, the website, send emails of encouragement to our Knesset members in Israel, to the Prime Minister's office. Let them know that despite what Obama and Kerry do, the American people stand with Israel. There was a Pew Research poll done back in February, Perry. 70% of Americans polled support the state of Israel over the Palestinians. We know that Americans are smart enough to get it. Unfortunately, we have a criminal in the White House who is using our tax dollars to attack our only friend and ally. We are using our tax dollars to not only fund terrorist groups and regimes like Mahmoud Abbas, the Fatah Party, but we're also seeing that with what is happening in the Middle East and funding these terrorist groups. It's outrageous what is going on. It's pathetic that our Congress has not taken action to remove this man from office. He should be brought up on articles of, or impeachment articles should be drawn up on this man because of what he is doing. He is involved in treason. He is aiding and abetting our enemy. We have Christians being slaughtered throughout the Middle East because of our failed policy in the United States of America. We should be contacting our congressmen and senators on all of these issues, but especially on the issue of cutting the funding and making sure we do not give Mahmoud Abbas another dime.
You know, Laurie, when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke before the joint session of Congress, it was absolutely brilliant, and it was what a world leader truly looks like. And I didn't think he could possibly ever top that speech until he went before the UN a couple of weeks ago and stood up and gave his speech in defense of Israel. It was so remarkable. It is such a piece of history. It will go down as one of the great speeches of all time. And yet there they sat, silent, absolutely complete silence.
And nothing has been done since. Nothing, Perry. This is, you know, Bibi is the statesman of the world. He is the one who is representing freedom and the values, the Judeo-Christian values that we as the United States and Israel uphold before the world. It is horrifying to see how quickly we are spiraling down into the abyss. And Perry, it's why, you know, I have been adamant to Christians, not to the secular world, to Christians, because it is our biblical responsibility, because we will stand before Almighty God one day, and he will ask us, as he told the prophet Obadiah, one day he would wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob, or Israel, was held in captivity and they did nothing. Perry, we cannot stand by. If 70% of Americans support the state of Israel, we have got to demand that our government leaders implement policies and values that reflect that. We cannot sit by. We have an election coming up. And this is so every election cycle, I always say, this election coming up is the most important. And they were. But I'm telling you, this is the most important election coming up. If we do not change the leadership and elect godly leaders who are willing to fight against the establishment, against the mainstream media, to uphold the Judeo-Christian values that this country was built upon, there is no hope for the United States of America, Perry. And God will.
Let me ask you. Yeah, excuse me. Let me ask you this. You took members of Congress with you. Did they go home changed?
Absolutely. The first 2 days, as I said, on that trip, were very sobering for these men and women, their wives. They were able to see what Israel has to endure on sometimes a daily basis. We took them to Sderot, where they could see some of the casings, 40,000 missile casings, not for all 40,000, but 40,000 rockets were lobbed at this city since 2012. And here, they got to see some of the missile casings that have landed in this little community. It was a very sobering reminder of the price that our Jewish brethren have to pay in living in the land that God calls his. And I believe that we have committed friends. We saw Congressman Jordan during the recent hearings, the Benghazi hearings with Hillary Clinton. We do have the leaders that are willing to stand up, but they have to hear from the people. We have to encourage them. We've got to pray for them. We've got to contact them and inform them and let them know how we feel. But then we've got to email them. We've got to call their office and commend them and encourage them to stand fast.
Before I run out of time, again, to our viewers and listeners, PJTN, that's Proclaim Justice to the Nation, but PJTN.org is Laurie's website. I know you're working on a new documentary, Victims of Peace. Tell us about it quickly.
So this next documentary is going to expose the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, and also what is happening on our college campuses with these attacks, with the attacks that are happening against our Jewish brethren. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. We're going to release it. It's going to premiere at the NRB in 2016. So you got to be there, Perry.
I will be. Well, Laurie, you're an inspiration. Please know, I know our audience supports you and supports what you're doing, and certainly prays for and supports the state of Israel. I hope that our upcoming election will be a referendum on the incredible what's happened with this administration. What one administration has done to the Middle East is just unbelievable. And I can't imagine living in a place where you don't know when the next missile is going to come over the fence, and you don't know if the bus you're going to get on to go to town is going to blow up. I can't imagine living like that.
Oh, I know. God forbid. God forbid. And we shouldn't allow it to be happening in Israel either.
All right. Keep up the good fight. We pray for you. Thank you. Look forward to talking to you again and again and again.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Laurie Cardoza-Moore. Again, that website is pjtn.org. Proclaiming Justice to the Nation, pjtn.org. We'll be right back.